ahead, put it on real tight. Hope you brought your best tonight. They say they got the fireworks, yeah, they say they got the show. You're around the shoots, you're the best, so let's go.
This is Texas Toast. I'm your host, Miss Helen. Kick back and enjoy as we toast the best from Texas.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Texas Toast. I'm Miss Helen, and I am so happy and so proud that we have William Beckmann with us for this particular episode. And it's going to be so much fun digging in for everyone to get to know William and his story. And if you haven't heard his voice in music, well, then just sit back and relax. Welcome, William. How are you?
Miss Helen, I'm doing all right. How are you doing?
I am wonderful now that I have you here. So let's go back to your hometown, Del Rio. So you were born and raised in Del Rio and actually came from a ranching family, of course, in that area.
Yes, my father and my grandfather are both in the cattle business, and now my older brother is involved in that same business. So I jokingly tell people that my family are real cowboys, and I just sing songs about cowboy things.
Well, you do a great job with your singing, and Del Rio is absolutely gorgeous. And of course, my favorite tortilla chips are from there.
Julio's,
yes.
Oh yeah, I know it well. I grew up eating those chips, not knowing. I mean, we knew they were a Del Rio thing, but I didn't know that when I was really young, nobody else could get them. It was just kind of a South Texas thing, and now I think they're all over the country, which is really amazing.
Yes, they're the best. And so speaking of growing up in Del Rio, someone that has become very important in your life, I want you to fill us in on the story. Of course, Rodney Foster is a native of Del Rio as well. And you got a meeting, you met him first when you were in high school. How did that go down?
One of my high school teachers and my dad are really good friends, and his name is John Wardlaw, and he and Rodney grew up together. So when I was in high school, they had set up a meeting for us, and I was really nervous, but really excited too. And ever since then, Rodney kind of took me under his wing, and we've been buddies ever since.
Yeah, that was it. I mean, it's kind of cool that, I mean, because he's like one of my all-time favorites. So I think I just think that's awesome. So let's talk about your story now. You graduated high school. You did attend Belmont University, which is a great choice since you're in the music business. But how, being from Del Rio, did you end up at Belmont?
Well, I initially I enrolled in St. Edward's University, which is a school in Austin, Texas. And then after having studied there for 2 years, I transferred over to Belmont. But Rodney was really the one that convinced me to move to Nashville and to go to that school. And I had discussed it with my parents, and we thought it'd be a good idea to stay in Texas for a couple of years and get a lot of the basic courses out of the way before transferring over and moving out of state. And that's what I did. And I'm really glad I did it, because going to Belmont really taught me a lot about the music, or the business side of the music industry. And I really, looking back on it, I'm grateful that I had that opportunity, because it taught me a lot about that side of things, which I really didn't know much about at the time.
When did you first start writing songs?
Probably right after I met Rodney in high school. So I'd say when I was in the 10th grade, maybe something like 9th grade, 10th grade, something like that.
And so you had a band when you were in high school?
I did. We were in a cover band. We played a lot of classic rock and country songs, but none of us really wrote. We weren't really songwriters, so I really needed Rodney's help to help me get into that world. And when I'd first met Rodney, he encouraged me to write 100 songs. He said, if you write 100 songs, I'll take you seriously and I'll help you out. And that's what I did. I wrote 100 of the worst songs I think anybody's ever heard in their life.
So but, you wrote the 100 songs.
It took me about a year to do, but I wrote 100 songs. And the next time I saw him, it was probably about a year later, he asked me if I'd written 100 songs, and I said, yes, sir. And he asked me if any of them were any good, and I said, no. And he laughed, and he said, well, that was the whole point. The point is to flush out all those bad songs and to really get you into the routine and understand what makes them strong songs or weak songs, and how to avoid those same potholes. And that was really what he taught me. He taught me the work ethic, and if you want to be a songwriter, you got to write songs. And so that's, I really I tell people I credit Rodney with teaching me the work ethic that's required to be a songwriter.
Well, and that's amazing to be in high school and to have Rodney Foster tell you that, and you followed up and you did the 100 songs. So I think that's amazing. You've had a lot of people cross your path, and we'll get into some of those other people. But so while you were in college, did you do music while you were in college, or did you just pretty much concentrate on your studies? I mean, I know the music kind of went hand in hand, but tell me about that during that time.
I would love to tell you I was a perfect student and that I was just focusing on my studies, but no, I was out and playing wherever I could play and writing songs and trying to get better at that. When I moved to Belmont is really when I had better opportunities to go out and perform publicly, because when I was living in Austin, I was still too young to really go out and to perform at a lot of the bars there in town. So a lot of it was just kind of staying at home and writing and hanging out with friends that were also musicians and whatnot. But in Nashville, it was a little bit different because Belmont's such a music school that we would get together and do writers' rounds and stuff like that around town. And Nashville's pretty welcoming when it comes to younger artists that aren't really old enough to go into the bars and play. There's all kinds of great venues where you can bring your guitar and share a couple songs that you've written. And so it was really, really cool to have that transition there.
So I actually discovered you when Bourbon Whiskey dropped, and I was going through and previewing some of the new radio releases, and my mouth dropped. Your voice, I mean, I can't even find the words for it. What are your words for your voice?
I don't know if you can see the Rat Pack back here, but I'm a huge Sinatra and what I call traditional pop, which is, the pop music of the 50s and 60s. I just love really big bassy voices, and thankfully I was blessed with one that's kind of in the lower register, but a lot of traditional country, and as well, the Texas country scene was a big part of my upbringing as well. And it's funny that now I'm sort of involved in that. And a lot of those a lot of those guys are my friends, now. And it's funny because I grew up listening to their music, people like Randy Rogers band and Wade Bowen and even kind of the generation before that, like Robert Earl Keen and those guys. I was always trying to listen to music that I found was a good balance between country music, but also the songwriting thing too, because it was at a time where I was really trying to focus on being a better songwriter. So I was listening to a lot of Lyle Lovett. It's people like Sinatra and George Strait. As much as I loved their voices, they weren't in the songwriting category as much as they were just great vocalists and great musicians. But I don't know. I don't know how to classify myself or my voice, but I just like music that I feel can be timeless, and I think that's where Bourbon Whiskey kind of came from, that search, that longing for something like that.
Yes, it seems like you're just, it's kind of that old soul kind of thing. But when I first heard it, I was like, who is this? Is this for real? And I was like, wow, this is awesome. So let's talk about some of the people also outside of Rodney that have crossed your path. You had a chance meeting that's turned into a big thing at the Texas Regional Radio Music Awards when Randy Rogers picked up on you, and I know you've been touring with him and Parker McCollum, Wade Bowen, Flatland Cavalry. So tell me about that meeting with Randy that night.
So that night was definitely a special night. It's a night I won't ever forget. And what happened was each year they do that award show. They have what they call the New Faces concert, which is where they pick, I believe, roughly around 10 new artists on the scene, and they do a writer's round, like I was explaining earlier, which is, for anybody watching, if they're not familiar with what a writer's round is, it's where they get 2 or 3 songwriters on stage together, and you basically take turns playing songs. So, somebody will sing a song, then the next person goes, and then the next person goes, and it comes back around to you. And having gone to Belmont, it's a big thing in Nashville. It's kind of where it started. I was so used to doing that. And oftentimes you're on stage with people that you've never met before. And it's always, it kind of keeps you on your toes, because the girl next to you might be singing like the saddest breakup song you've ever heard. And so then you kind of feel obligated to maybe kind of play something a little bit upbeat or happy, or maybe something even kind of like tongue in cheek and kind of funny, just to kind of give it that contrast. And so I never knew what I was going to sing. I always kind of waited till the person next to me sang, and then I'd have a couple different songs in my head that I could pick from. And that's really what we did. So we all took turns. And then at the end of that, the crowd voted. And I believe they had it streamed, and people online could vote as well. And whoever they picked as the winner was the person that got to sing the following night, which was the actual award show itself. And I was the one that they voted for. And the next night I got to sing Bourbon Whiskey, actually, and Randy and Wade Bowen, Kevin Fowler, thinking who else. There was a bunch of really, of course, every radio programmer in the state of Texas was there. So I got to sing one song, and it was Bourbon Whiskey was the one that everybody really wanted me to sing. So that was how I got to sing in front of all of those great, talented artists. And I've been buddies with Randy ever since.
Yes, and I know you've done a lot of shows with him. So what's it like when you're on the road? What's your live shows like? What's your band like?
It's amazing. It's a dream come true. I never really got to experience touring until I got out of college, and it was really interesting because I got to jump right in on some really big shows with Randy. My band's fantastic. They kind of live all over the state of Texas, but my guitar player is actually somebody that I met at Belmont, and then he ended up moving back to Texas. So it's funny. We used to hang out all the time years ago, and never thought that we'd be touring together. But here we are, all these years later, doing it. But it's great. We feel very blessed to have the opportunities to get to open up for some of our heroes who are now friends of ours. And I just hope that we continue to be able to put on those shows for people.
Mm-hmm. Let's dig into your music. Your 2018 debut album was Outskirts of Town, which I've listened to, and everything good on there. So what was it like going through the process of recording your first debut album?
It was really interesting because I had no idea what I was doing. I had saved up a bunch of money, and I knew that I wanted to put some music out, and we went into a studio here in town, and I didn't have a producer. I was trying to self-produce it, and but we just picked a bunch of songs. There's one song off there that I think I'm the proudest of. It's the last one. It's called it's called Leaving Town.
Leaving Town.
And Rodney actually produced that for me, and we did it at his house, at his home studio. And he said he loved that song. And that was, I think, since that song had a little bit more direction because Rodney was in the room with me the whole time, I think it really ended up kind of nailing the head. And that's that's kind of how you do it. And that's because I never really understood what a producer's role is in the making of an album until I had that experience with Rodney. Because when I was enrolled at Belmont, I was in the music business program. So I was learning a lot about the business side of things, and my courses sort of revolved around that. So I had to take classes like publishing, copyright law, contract law, a lot of these things that some people might not find very interesting, but I was actually already going down a business route when I was going into college. However, there were other friends of mine that were commercial voice majors, which basically means you can sing like Mariah Carey. You know, a lot of the females that can just powerhouses, they were in that program. And so their major is that, like, literally singing. There was other friends of mine that were audio engineer majors, which basically means you want to produce and you want to learn how to use Pro Tools and how to make a record, which microphone techniques to use. Other people were songwriting majors, and they were studying how to be professional songwriters. So in my mind, a producer was somebody that knew how to do all the technical stuff, when I walk into a recording studio and I see all the faders and all the knobs and stuff, that stuff freaks me out because I don't know how to work any of that. And there are a lot of producers that have that basic knowledge of engineering an album, but more so, a producer can be viewed as like a director of a film, somebody that just looks at it at the project from a bird's eye view and tries to make sure that you accomplish whatever it is that you're trying to go for. I mean, they're the ones that guide you. And and Rodney was that for me on that one song. And so with this next record, I've got a producer, Orrin Thornton, and he's fantastic because his ideas are so great. And if I do something and if he's wanting to try something different, he makes it so comfortable for me. And I think that's really important when you're in the studio, because at the end of the day, whether it's my song or somebody else's song that I'm cutting, my job at the forefront is to make sure that I'm singing it the best I can do it, and that we're delivering it the best way. It's not, you can get stretched a little thin when you're trying to go in and record a take and then go back out and try to like look at it from out here and then trying to go back in. It can really kind of confuse you. So it's really good to have the guidance, I think, that a really good producer provides. And so that was my experience with our first record. Is a lot of it was just me kind of fooling around in the studio. And then once I did that one song with Rodney, it really gave me the confidence that I think I needed to continue the recording process.
So let's talk about let's go ahead and talk about Bourbon Whiskey, and
okay.
It being released, and it made it to the top 10 on the Texas Regional Radio Report. And I followed it on the charts. I watched it grow up and become what it became. And so tell me the background on that song, when you wrote it, the recording process, because it's such a beauty.
Thank you. I have to say, I had that song for quite a while, and all of my friends were just always nagging at me to record it and put it out. I think I wrote it in 2000. I want to say 2017. No, it was earlier than that. It must have been 2015 or 2016.
Wow.
2015. Now that I remember. And so I barely put it out this past year, but it's such an old song. I'm 26 years old, but I've been blessed / cursed with a baby face. And so a lot of it was like, man, I don't know if people will believe me that I'm drinking bourbon whiskey and my woman walked out on me. I mean, to tell you the truth, it was just, it was one of those songs. I was like, man, this is such an old sounding song.
Yes.
That, back when I initially wrote it, I was like, I just don't know if people will believe me, if I can really sell it the way. And so I waited a couple years.
Sold it. You sold it.
Thank you. Thank you. And I waited a couple years, and then finally I was like, you know what? This is one of my favorite songs I've ever written. I played every night. I had to answer Facebook messages and Instagram messages of people like, when is that whiskey song coming out? When is that bourbon song coming out? And I was like, you know what? Let's record it. And so we went around to recording it. And not a lot of people know that the recording that you hear is all one take. So from the start of the song to the end of the song, it's all one performance, which is really neat, because that's a lot of, when you listen to traditional country music from the 50s and 60s, which is what I was trying to go for with that particular song, a lot of the recording process was like that. It's like, if you got it, then you got it. If you messed up, then all right, start over from the beginning and try to do it again. And so it was really kind of cool to not have to go back or do anything. I mean, I was playing the guitar at the same time I'm singing, and the musicians are playing, the drummers playing at the same time. And so it was really, really fun to record that way.
Another song I want to hit on that we actually highlighted on Texas on Tap, another weekly feature that we have. A gorgeous song you have is In the Dark.
Thank you. One of my favorites.
Yes, that's a good one. So that one, just briefly, how did that one come about?
I wrote that song when I was I was visiting my parents' house in Del Rio, my hometown. And, that's one of those songs that it's so special to me. And it's not really about any one particular person, but I remember when I was writing it, I was thinking of a couple different individuals in my life, but I started that song off with the guitar part, with the acoustic guitar part, which is to me a really interesting guitar lick. But sometimes when I'm writing songs, I'll just pull out my phone and I'll start recording something. I'll just put it on my voice memo, and I'll just start mumbling words, and anything that kind of comes into my head, I'll just start trying to find something that I can. You try to get that thread and start pulling that thread to see where it leads. And that's what I did with that song. And I remember just singing a bunch of stuff and then kind of hitting stop, and I kind of left it alone for a day. And then when I went back and listened to it, I loved everything I sang, and I want to say about 90 to 95% of what the song is now, what it became, was what I just was coming up with. I was just almost freestyling it in a way, and then I think I went back and kind of cleaned a couple things up. But it's really one of those songs that just kind of fell out of nowhere. I must have written it in about 15 minutes or something like that.
Wow, that's amazing. It's a gorgeous song. So
Thank
something
you.
that you've got kind of a big deal for you right now is moving from your original music to your remake of Bruce Springsteen's I'm on Fire, which you killed it on that.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a very Western thing. I think it sounds like it could be like on a soundtrack of a Western film. I've always been such a big Bruce Springsteen fan, and when it came time to record, my producer, he lives in Springfield, Missouri, and we first got together kind of in the thick of COVID, and so I'd gone to Springfield. There's a really cool studio there, and we had no musicians at all. We just kind of decided to go into the studio and just kind of mess around, get to know each other a little bit, record a couple things with no intention whatsoever really having anything that we were going to put out. But Oren, who's my producer, plays a bunch of different instruments. He plays the guitar and piano and the drums, and I play the piano and the guitar and the bass as well. And so we started off and we were just kind of messing around. I told him, I was like, I do this really different cover of Bruce Springsteen. And so he just started rolling the tape, and we just started layering all these different parts to it. And then, and it ended up being really cool. And so we decided to put it out, but it was just honestly, it was just an accident. We were just goofing off in the studio, and that's what it became. But there's only two people on that whole, we played everything. I think he played the drums and the bass, and I played all the guitars, and then there's an organ, there's a piano part in the background that you hear, and then of course I sang it, and then at the very end there's like a dueling electric guitar thing, and that's both him and I, we were playing electric guitar and playing solos and stuff, so it was really fun.
It's phenomenal. I love your voice on it. It's just like one of those you'd have to keep listening over and over and over. So looking at the future, I do know I've seen on my stuff that you have a single that's going for ads to radio. And I know it's been getting some ads because Texas Regional Radio Report, it was one of the most added songs this past week, but the new single is Follow. So everyone can be looking forward to that coming out to radio.
Yes. And it's they pitched that song to me. My publisher did. And I fell in love with it. It was actually really, really different when I heard the demo for it. That song was written by Mark Beeson and Eric Pasley. And it's a great song. It's just, you hear some songs and they're so catchy, you're like, man, I've got to cut that. And I was surprised nobody cut it before. But I played it a couple times for Randy Rogers and Parker McCollum, and they both said they loved the song. So we're really excited. It's my first time, aside from the Springsteen cover, it's the first time I've cut an outside song, a song that I didn't write. So I'm really, really excited. And I like that process too. It kind of takes the songwriter aspect completely out of it. And you're just taking a song at face value and trying to figure out how you can incorporate your own things to it and how to make it your own. So I'm really excited. And that's something that I would love to do. I'd love to continue doing. George Strait made a career out of listening to songs and picking the ones that he thought he fit his style, and a lot of other Nashville recording artists do that. So it's something that was new to me, but I'm really glad that they trusted me with that song.
Well, absolutely. I did preview it and listen to it, and it's a good one. And
thank you.
I looked at the numbers on it, and it's doing real good for you. So speaking of doing real good for you, you've got some upcoming shows. I noticed that you have a show coming up. Well, actually, at Schrader Dance Hall with Flatland Cavalry. That's kind of my backyard. I'm on the Texas Gulf Coast, and that's kind of one of the best dance halls for me to get to.
Well, I hope you come out.
I'm going to try. So who else are you going to be out on the road with? What's the big stuff coming up for you?
We do have a lot of shows with Flatland coming up, and they're so good to me. And Cleto and the guys, they're some of the nicest guys in the business. And so to get to tour with them is always a good time. So we'll be playing a bunch with them. We do have a lot of headlining stuff as well. I know we're playing the Blue Light in Lubbock, and we're headlining that, and it's always a good time there. And that's such a historic venue too. To get to play there again is going to be a lot of fun. I know we're playing at Cheatham Street Warehouse in San Marcos as well. I think we're doing a really big show here in Nashville at Ascend Amphitheater with Randy Rogers Band and Parker McCollum, and that'll be in May. But I've seen a lot of shows there, and to get to play on that stage is really a dream come true. So we're looking forward to that.
Wow, you have a lot of good stuff going on. And so are you currently working on a new album that's going to be released eventually?
Yes. We're shooting for April for the album. It'll be an EP to come out, but there's a lot of great songs that nobody's heard yet. And we're excited. You know, the past 2 years have been crazy for everybody. And we really wanted to get some new music out in 2020. And it's taken us a little bit longer to put it out, but we're thankful that we're finally getting to get around to it.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on Texas Toast, and you got it going on. Keep up the good work, and we'll definitely be following. We'll be following along with you, William Beckmann. Everyone, thanks for joining us, William.
Thank you so much.
She knew where I was from as she left. I dare to say, well, you can